Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of my 3-part series on how I became a counsellor. So if you want to check out part 1, it should be linked down below. So part 2 is going to be about my placement and work experience as a counsellor. If you watched part 1, you would have heard about how I decided to become a counsellor and what degrees I studied to become a counsellor. So as a part of my master's degree, it was a Master of Counselling and Psychotherapy at the University of Adelaide. That involved a 200-hour placement of face-to-face contact. So it was 100 hours at one place and 100 hours at another place. So how I got those placements were, the first one was chosen by uni. There was a placement coordinator and she found the placements for us, and that was at a homelessness service. So when it was me and another girl from my course, we were based at that service for our placement for 100 hours of client contact. So when we first got there, there wasn't actually a counselling service in that agency. It was more of a place for people who are homeless to come and get help with finding housing or being placed in emergency housing, or people who were housed in public housing, and then there was a team who would go in and check on them in home and help them out with different applying for rentals or just managing their independence in the community. And so I was placed in the intake and assessment team. So that was the team who would work with people who would come in, drop in and be pretty much homeless or near homelessness, and they would be requiring assistance on finding housing. So in that position, I did experience a lot of different people, experience working with a lot of different people and interactions with them, but it wasn't really a counselling role. It wasn't, a person would come in for their counselling session, we would provide a therapy or work with them in some way, and then they would leave and then come in for the next session. It was more of a, what it was intake and assessment. So they would come in, we'd do an assessment with them, ask them lots of questions about their situation, and then decide how to assist them. So my friend and I decided to go to the manager of the agency, and we talked to him because we also had a supervisor in the agency. So we talked to her and we went to the manager all together and we said, we're not really getting the counselling experience that we should be getting. Is there anything that we can do? So then he actually was quite open to us and suggested that we start a counselling service within their agency. So he said, just, you're counselling students, so you can do this. Make flyers, print them off, stick them in the front office area, and then promote it to the clients that walk in who are, near either homeless or near homelessness, because they're probably going to need that service. So that's exactly what we did. We printed off flyers and we put them up, and then we started promoting the counselling service and inviting people to book in sessions if they wanted to. And that started working. We had a few people booking in. We also, so in the initial roles, it wasn't that we didn't have any counselling experience whatsoever, because we did, especially for me, I had people come in and I would sit with them one-on-one in a room and ask them all these questions, and you would have to use your counselling skills that we were learning at uni, because a lot of the time they would either get emotional or they would be in a hard situation where they're homeless and they just need that supportive person to be able to talk through their situation with them. So that was quite a good experience, because we got a whole range of different kind of clients, and we had to there was one situation where I saw a client, a young woman, for counselling, and she booked in for a second session. She didn't end up coming, so I had to call her and ask her if she still wanted to come in, like reschedule her appointment. And then she kind of just went off at me and was pretty much yelling at me. And as a student with not much experience, I was a bit taken back. And in the end, another colleague ended up coming up and taking the phone and just saying, sorry, you're not listening, so we're gonna have to hang up the phone. But she was, kind of making threats, and it was saying she was gonna hurt herself. And as a counsellor, you're required to report this to like the mental health services if someone's threatening to hurt themselves or hurt someone else. So I ended up having to make a report, and then they end up contacting her and working with her to figure out what's going on for her. So that turned out into a bit of a situation, but again, it was all good experience, and it definitely happens in a counselling role and in this kind of work, so it was good to experience that from the very beginning. So my second work experience or placement was at Relationships Australia, South Australia, and I actually got that placement through a friend who was working there at the time but also studying my course. So she spoke to one of the team leaders of it was a kids team who worked with children who were going through domestic violence and homelessness. So she spoke to that team leader, and the team leader was happy to have me there. And so through that placement, I would work with the rest of the team, and we would go and visit kids in school and in their homes. For the most times it would be at school, and then we would run group programs. So the in-school experience was one-on-one with the kids, and we would do some kind of therapeutic work with them because they were going through hard stuff at home, and it was a space for them to be able to open up and tell someone who would listen what's going on for them and how it's affecting them emotionally. And we would work with them to help them out in their situation, and to make sure that they know they have someone who they can talk to. And the group programs were actually really cool because we had to either create a program, or there was one created already and we would facilitate that. But it was fun when we got to create it because I love making stuff. I have a creative brain, so it was really fun to be able to put together a group program, and we would run them in the school holidays. So we would go pick up all the kids in a big van and then take them to a location, usually like either a school hall or like a council hall, and we would run the group for a day, and then make lunch with them and do all of that, and then drop them home on the way home and go back to the office. So there was also one group program that I ran with a school, and so I would go into the school and run it with a couple of the teachers there, or the teachers' aides, or the support teachers. And it was a nice place for like the students to come who were experiencing something not very nice at home, and they could come and express themselves in different ways and share what's going on for them. So that was really great. So those were my two placements, and those got me 200 hours of client contact. So even if I was at the place for 7 hours for my placement, I might only have like 1 or 2 hours of client contact. So it was pretty much like full days of placement to achieve full days of placement for 1.5 years to achieve the 200 hours of client contact. So the second year is when you do the placement. Well, that's how it was when I did the course. The second year was when we did the placement, and it was meant to finish in that second year. But I ended up going over about a year and a few months to actually get all of my hours. I think they've changed the course now a little bit, where you don't have to get so many hours, but you also won't be able to register as a counsellor until you get those 200 hours. So I'm glad that I got to finish that during uni, and then I didn't have to worry about it when I was working. So then brings me to my work experiences. So during my placement at Relationships Australia, I got offered a small kind of casual part-time position, and that was to go into a school and work with a student who was one of their clients and do some therapeutic work with them. And then I also got another casual position with them, which was being a group facilitator, and that was with one of the councils. It was also joint with like a circus program for kids. So the kids got to learn different circus skills, and I got to learn some things as well. I probably learned a bit of juggling through that. Then myself and a colleague had to facilitate activities that would bring the kids together. So the circus, there were people from like the circus program, they would run the circus activities, and then myself and a colleague would facilitate more of the therapeutic work. So that was, how do we bring the kids together? How do we make them feel like they're a part of a group? How do we make them feel like they can participate and they can share what's going on for them? And so we did things like making a giant piece of art together and then printing that piece of artwork on t-shirts. And so everyone had their t-shirts. We would come up with group norms. So, you know, being respectful to each other, and the kids would come up with these themselves. So then they felt like they're a part of putting this group together. And then I also had another small part-time position working with the post-care Find and Connect team, also at Relationships Australia, and they would work with people who were in care as children, so either adopted or foster care or in a children's home, and then they are now adults and they're needing support around finding housing or getting hospital records or looking for family. And that was really interesting too, because I felt like a bit of a detective sometimes when I had to look for different family members or getting medical records and things like that. So I was doing these 3 part-time casual kind of positions for about 3 to 5 months. Some of them ended earlier than others. And then at the same time I was applying for other jobs because I needed to get something that was a bit more permanent. So as I was applying for jobs or other jobs, I ended up getting a call back from the place that I'm working now, which is a charity that works with people who have a disability, specifically a vision or hearing loss. I got called in for an interview with them and I ended up getting that job. At the time, it was a case manager position. So I got there and I started working with people who were vision impaired, blind, hearing impaired or deaf, and I'd work with them on whatever was coming up for them, whether it be housing issues, finance issues, you know, connecting them with other services to help them be more independent in the community. And so I've now been working there for 4 years, and when I started working there, it was probably a year in. They have a counsellor who works there, and that counsellor was going on maternity leave. So because I have my studies in counselling, they asked me if I would like to take on that role, and so to cover her while she was on maternity leave. So of course I said yes, and I ended up doing that, and then she ended up coming back, but they also kept me on because she came back for less hours than she was doing. So they kept me on for 1 day and they kept her on for 1 day, and we were both sharing the counselling role. And then maybe a few months or year later, she decided to leave, and she was going on to a different position. So they offered me the counselling role again completely. And so now I'm doing both case management and counselling as well. And that's where I'm at now. I'm still working at this organisation. As I said, it's been 4 years and I'm really enjoying it, and yeah, just getting to use my skills and hopefully helping people and impact. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful and interesting. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know down below and I'll try and answer them. Also, please subscribe to my channel. The button is just over there, and that will keep you updated with my videos and the next part in this series. So I look forward to seeing you and talking to you then. Thanks for watching. Bye.